there is concert-related drama surrounding the Colorado Buffaloes. I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about the situation, what could be true, what couldn't be, and all that, and some more.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Boulder. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys for starting your week off with me. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. Make me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Tomorrow's episode, we're going to have Colin Moore, Life and Football, join the show, so you guys won't want to miss that. But first, before we get to all of that, we got to talk about the latest drama surrounding Colorado football, Deion Sanders, Lil Wayne, and Shedeur Sanders. There's this whole narrative or story right now that an anonymous player spoke to someone at Athlon Sports and said the Wayne concert was the final straw for a few players who hit the transfer portal. When Coach Prime told us we all had to be there to support Shedeur as a rapper, they were not happy at all. To be honest, it was nothing but a huge distraction. Daddy ball was being played. So obviously, this is quite the interesting development because what looks like a really fun event is now being tabbed as like a Shedeur Sanders rap. So that way we could support Lil Wayne. So that way we could support all of this drama that's going on in Colorado. I think a few things need to be said first. First of all, I don't run the Colorado site over at Athlon. Athlon just launched new sites covering every college football team. I do not run that one. I covered them for the national trending news team and stuff like that. So wasn't me. So don't come at me. I have nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with the story. Don't know who is talking to who. Don't know either of anyone involved. But what I do know is I don't doubt that a former player said something like this because of what we've seen from former players. We've seen Gavin Cold throw shade at Shedeur. We've seen Kavosi Smoke throw shade at the program itself, saying it was selfish. They could have gone undefeated or whatever. They could have made it to the playoff, but it was selfish. We've seen guys trash this program on their way out. Like, it's not new. It's just not. We've seen, which I know a lot of you guys took it as trashing the program, the Athletic article, which it really wasn't, in the sense that like these guys were just sharing their experience of like how it felt to be a holdover from the previous regime that was asked to leave. We've seen that. We've seen guys sort of shade the program on their way out. It happens to every program everywhere across the country where a player leaves a program and they're like, you know what, over there at Taco Bell Tech, they're doing this and it kind of sucks or whatever. Like, when you leave a job, you quit a job on your own, or like you get fired from a job, you're not going to have great things to say. That's just how life works. But I do want to point out Deion Sanders has denied it. Deion Sanders Jr., the governor of Colorado, hopped in, like former or current players have hopped in and said it's not true. So, I mean, honestly, unless someone comes forward and says, yeah, I said that and yeah, it was true, or shows a message or something, it's just going to be they said versus they said. So there's really not get lost in the semantics of like that. Like, realistically, the person that reported it, they're going to back it up because obviously that's what someone told them. And realistically, the program is going to deny that because that would make them look incredibly, that would be a very bad look. We'll just call it that. But I do want to point out that this is where I think it's important to sort of understand that there's a disgruntled worker kind of aspect to this, where it's like, could someone have said this? Maybe, but like who's saying this? And like, which players that left the program would say this? Because first of all, the spring game was on April 27th. And so I'm not saying that it was any of these guys, but I'm just going to tell you who left the program around the spring game. Because obviously the players could have known this for months in advance. We don't know how early they knew about the Lil Wayne concert or the Shedeur Sanders rap career, which, I mean, honestly, the song's like, I think it's less than 2 minutes long on Spotify. It is what it is. It's a solid song. It's not my favorite, but it's solid. For someone who's not like really, for someone in Shedeur Sanders who's not a full-time musician, I feel like he did well, I guess. But let's just talk about the players who left the program. And this goes for, and I'm not singling any of these guys out. These are just examples. I could go through every single one of Colorado's transfer portal class and tell you whether or not they had an impact this past season. And so I think this is kind of where I'm getting at with the disgruntled ex-employee type vibe with this. So based on the guys that entered the portal around the spring game, which again was April 27th, you have someone like Gavin Cole who left the program and obviously had his drama with Shedeur. I don't think what he said was absolutely necessary. I do think it's sort of like a being upset type thing. Other guys who left the program around that time. Adam Hopkins left before, former 4-star receiver that transitioned to a corner. He's now at Charlotte. He left or entered the portal on the 22nd. Eric Brantley, linebacker, he left on the 19th. J.J. Hawkins, the Ole Miss transfer, who didn't really play a lot, he left on the 22nd as well. And so Eric Brantley was a freshman, so he was only there for the spring. He literally was in the class of 2024, so obviously got there, and then he transferred to Florida Atlantic. So, Florida Atlantic, correct. Yeah, so realistically, maybe it just wasn't the scene for him. I think we see it a lot across the country where guys will commit to a college and then they get there and they're like, you know what, this just isn't what I thought it was going to be, or I get homesick and whatever happens. So those are the guys that left before. And then the guys that left after: Bishop Thomas, who was kicked off the team. Israel Solomon, who, if I remember correctly, and I feel like I'm like 99.9% sure, Coach Prime like tweeted at him like that he was a great kid and all that. And so I don't think there was any beef there that I would know about. And then Omarion Cooper, who returned to Florida State. So obviously there's a lot more guys that enter the portal. Their class currently is sitting at 41 outgoing transfers. You got guys like DeMoy Kennedy, who entered the portal April 18th. You got Jacob Page, who entered on the 16th. Jaden Milner-Jones, Chaz Wallace, Miles Slusher, all these guys. So there's no telling who said this, who the source was. But I don't think this is anything that, like, it's a really weird to go out of your way, I guess, to sort of say this because you knew the drama that it would cause. I don't know who caused this, but Deion Sanders is adamantly denying it. And again, we're never going to find out who said it unless they decide to come forward and be like, here's the text messages, or here's the Slack or whatever, WhatsApp, where Coach Prime literally said, hey, you guys have to come to this concert to support Shedeur Sanders, because obviously I just don't know why that would be like I don't know why Deion Sanders would do that. Like, really, realistically, students were there. It's trended on social media. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal for him to be like, you guys know you have to be there for this. But I don't understand why people it's a weird situation. I don't really have a definitive take on this because obviously no one's going to report something that could get them in trouble or whatever it may be unless they have a hard confirmed source. And I'm assuming that they went through all of the journalistic matters where it's like, okay, got this confirmed by one person, got confirmed by another. And so I assume that someone said something along these lines. But for a former player to kind of come forward and say that, it's just really interesting. I think Colorado, the best thing to do is just move on from the situation. Be like, you know what? Deny it. Be like, you know what? Didn't happen. We want everybody to support everybody, but we never force people to support each other in non-football related activities. And I think it's just time. It's just got to move on. Like, it's what it comes down to. Now, again, don't think there's a need to sort of attack anyone. All the people saying release your sources, that's not how it works when you have a source. You don't be like, okay, now that I'm catching heat, I'm going to say who said it. Like, that's just not how it works. Otherwise, that person doesn't trust you and you lose that relationship. So it's a really interesting scenario. I don't think anything of it's like, if Coach Prime said that's not what he said, then I guess that's what we have to take it as. Like, I mean, unless I see any further proof, then I'm just going to assume that someone is a little bit unhappy of how their time went in Colorado. And so they're taking an opportunity to kind of take a shot at the program. And that's how I'm going to take it. Because I would imagine that even if the story itself isn't completely true, I imagine there's some truth in the sense that there was a final straw. Now, a lot of the players that left the program, they either weren't playing or it just didn't work out when they played. So I feel like that's something worth taking into note. You guys comment below. Is this anything? Big story, little story, nothing burger. You guys let me know what you think. I'm sure you will. When we come back, we're going to be talking about 3 position groups that I think went from a big weakness last year to a big strength ahead of 2024. But first, a word from our sponsors over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Let's talk about it from strength to a weakness. Obviously, Colorado had some major roster overhauls last season, or following last season. They lost, like I mentioned, as I was talking about in the previous segment. They lost over 40 players to the transfer portal. They added an absurd amount of players as well. They're currently added at their 24/7 has them at 42. I would say they're around 45 players added to their roster. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of different things going on in Boulder. But let's talk about the 3 position groups where it's like, okay, that group just went from being an utter disaster to being a strength of the team, or having the potential to be a strength of the team. I wouldn't say they're all strengths, but they could be strengths. Let's start with the obvious one, the offensive line. They allowed 56 sacks last year, which was 129th in the country. And they gave up 492 sack yards. For reference, I don't think Colorado's leading rusher had more than 400 yards rushing, if I'm not mistaken, which is not ideal. I stand corrected. No, I was correct. So Colorado gave up 492 yards of sacks. Dylan Edwards led the team in rushing last year with 76 carries for 321 yards. Not great. Shedeur Sanders was sacked because he was sacked quite a bit at Jackson State, which is just like the one flaw in his game where he needs to get rid of the ball more. He was sacked a total of 58 times in his 2 years at Jackson State and was sacked 52 times in his first year at Colorado. So what does Colorado do? Well, let me tell you what they do. They go out and they bring in a ton of offensive line talent. They get the party started by landing 5-star Jordan Seaton. There's a little bit of a scare at the end, I guess you could say, with Maryland, his hometown or home state program, getting into the mix and be like, hey, come be a Terp. Come be a Terp over here in Maryland. Which I don't really know what a terrapin is, or a turpin. Look like a turtle. Like, I know it's a turtle, but I've never heard of that kind of turtle. But either way, it's a Terp. Their mascot's a turtle-looking thing. Snapping turtle, maybe. I don't know. Not familiar with my turtle species. But either way, Maryland gets into the picture late. Ohio State was making a push. Colorado lands him. Then, in the portal, they go out and I kid you not, they land a guy, an Ethan Boyd from Michigan State, who had some experience. And I'm just running through all of them. I'm not going in order. I'm just going through order of who they added most recently. They had Zach Owens, 6'6", 375. Ethan Boyd, 6'7", 320. So they're getting size. Peyton Kirkland from Texas, 6'6", 350. Another offensive tackle. They also went out and got Philip Houston at FIU, 6'5", 250 pounds. Great depth piece. Wyatt Hummel from Villanova, 6'6", 315. He's played over thousands of snaps at the college football level. So you got Wyatt, you got Philip, you got Peyton Kirkland, you got Zach Owens, you have Ethan Boyd. So we're at 5 right now, which, I mean, 5 would be great. They added Tyler Johnson, who played a lot at Houston, 6 offensive lineman. They go and get Yakiri Walker, a center, 7 from UConn, played quite a bit for the Huskies. Khalil Benson, 8. Offensive tackle at Indiana, ton of experience. 9. Justin Mayers, UTEP. Sorry, if you see me itching my nose, I have allergies, and in California right now, we're struggling. But they bring in 9 new offensive linemen via the portal. They also brought in a couple JUCO guys. So this offensive line, plus Hank Zelinkus, is stepping up. He was starting in the spring game, and I think that's his job to lose. So they basically have 2 new entire offensive lines from compared to last year. And this group is going to, they're all proven for the most part. They have proven guys. They have a mixture of proven, and then they have a mixture of guys who haven't seen the field yet, but are good developmental pieces, like Peyton Kirkland from Texas. So they go out, they get the size, they get the strength, and they have a new offensive line coach in Phil Lodhall, who's realistically going to help this program, help this offensive line unit be a whole lot better. And so this offensive line just went from weakness where they couldn't protect the quarterback, they couldn't establish a run, to now they can establish a run. Now they will be able to protect the quarterback. And so I mentioned all the sacks Shedeur took. Let's talk about his stats with a horrendous offensive line. 3,230 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks, with the worst offensive line in college football. So that is quite something to be excited about, because realistically, he was doing all of this with a horrendous offensive line, right? So imagine what he's going to do with a little extra time, a little extra protection, a little extra sense of like, hey, I could drop back and not be killed in 2 seconds. So probably got to be a great feeling. Next, strength. I just talked about him a little bit. The run game. This obviously was heavily dependent on the offense line being terrible. So I don't want to discredit the running backs all that much, because Dylan Edwards showed a lot of flashes. Anthony Hankerson had his moments. Sivion Wilkerson, who's now at Georgia State, had his moments. But who is going to sort of thrive in a scenario where you can't even make it to the line of scrimmage? I wish I saved the chart. It'd be hard to sort of break down the data points, but there was a chart that I saw, and it was essentially how many yards per carry before contact did a team get. And Colorado was like absolutely towards the bottom. They actually had nearly negative yards per carry before contact. So basically, guys were getting into the backfield from the defense line before Colorado could even get to the line of scrimmage. So before they could even register a yard, someone was in the backfield. And so Colorado, obviously, they lose Dylan Edwards, they lose Sivion Wilkerson, they lose all the guys I talked about, but then they go out and get Dallin Hayden from Ohio State, who I think just needs an opportunity to prove himself. They go out and get the running back from Arkansas, Isaiah Gustave, who I think is a really interesting piece. I think he could be someone that contends for that starting role. They have Michael Welch. They have Charlie Offerdahl. They have Isaiah Harge, who don't know if he's going to be a running back, but popped off in the spring game. They have so many weapons now, and I think the offensive line being better will help the running back group be better. And if Colorado is a more balanced offense, it opens everything up for everyone. Shedeur Sanders will have more success because they're going to have to respect the run. The running backs will have more success just in general because they'll be able to make plays because they have a solid offense line in front of them. So look out for this new unit. And then obviously a new strength. I got to go with the defensive line. We're going back to the trenches. I talked about the offense line overhaul. The defense line overhaul is quite impressive. They have Tawfiq Thomas from Louisville. Dallin Hayes from Pitt, 4-year guy, was a starter for Pitt, had a big year. Left Pitt as someone who is going to start, Pittsburgh native, because he wants to be playing for someone who's going to contend for something. And he thinks Colorado is going to be that team, which you have to be confident if you're a Colorado fan. Then you have Rayan Buell from Ohio, 6'3", 277, solid size. You go out and you get a guy like Nikhil Webb-Walker, an edge rusher. You get another guy like Chidozie Nwankwo from Houston, the block bully, 5'11", 295, but he's a strong dude, wrestling state champ who fan favorite already, and I think he's someone who will have a major role. You have Anquin Barnes, who started the spring game, 6'5", 315 pounds. You have Quincy Wiggins, 6'5", 265 pounds, rated as a 4-star transfer, was a highly touted recruit that just didn't get it to work at LSU. Keaton Wade, one of the Wade twins, edge rusher from Kentucky, has some experience under his belt. BJ Green, all second team Pac-12, had 6 sacks last year. You have Samuel Okunolola, who 5 sacks last year as a freshman. Didn't get a lot, wasn't a full-time starter, and still had 5 sacks. So imagine what he does with more reps. Torian Carter, 6'3", 303 pounds, SEC experience. They have all of these guys who come in, they add size, they add experience, they add that tenacity, they add a bit of ferociousness that this unit simply lacked last year. So these 3 position groups, I think, will go from strengths to from weaknesses to strengths in 2024, which could be the difference between Colorado being a 6-6 team to an 8-4 team, or even above. So you guys comment below, which position group are you most excited about when 2024 rolls around of the 3 I mentioned? Because obviously there's a lot of improvement in Boulder, and I think a lot of people aren't ready for that. When we come back, we are going to be talking about your guys' championship bets. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Go check out Jaylen Brown. He's got to be the front runner. He's got to be, because he has done everything the Celtics need and then some. So go check out Jaylen Brown, her Finals MVP. You guys comment below what you think. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, give me those 5 stars. Share this with a friend, and let's just grow this community even more. Okay, let's talk about people betting on Colorado, because it's something. You guys are going hard in the paint. 4.5% of the bets placed on MGM were on Colorado to win the national title, which would be quite the big come up for Colorado. They would make history because obviously no team since 2011 at least, which I think is when they started keeping track of this, has won a championship without having a blue chip ratio, or making the blue chip ratio, which is having 50% of your roster being 4 or 5-star recruits. Transfers have been somewhat factored in, but not enough to the point. It hasn't happened enough to where a team made up of rosters, or a roster made up of transfers, has won a title. So let me tell you, because I'm looking over our FanDuel odds, because you guys know FanDuel, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, all that. These are interesting bets. FanDuel currently has Colorado as, let me see, plus 30,000. So some notable teams that have better odds than Colorado to win the title: Iowa State, TCU, Virginia Tech, Nebraska, Iowa, Arizona, Louisville, Kansas State. So a lot of teams in college football are viewed as having better odds. Now, if you guys were asking me, hey, what would you bet? This is by no means betting advice. I'm not expecting you to go place your salary on this or whatever it may be, but these are some bets that stand out to me. First of all, you look at Colorado's week 1 game against North Dakota State. Colorado's favored. They are favored by, I think it was 7 points, 7.5 points, which is pretty good considering North Dakota State is an FCS power. I think Colorado covers that. So that'd be an interesting one to go look at realistically, because if you're into that, ESPN, or they now have it at 8.5. So go get it before it goes up a little more, before people realize how many changes North Dakota State has had. You want to look at another interesting bet. I think Shedeur Sanders Heisman odds would be an interesting one, because obviously he's going to make some big plays. He's going to be slinging that ball over the yard. He has plus 4,000 odds. That'd be a good one. Then you also have Colorado's win total was set at 5.5. So go peep that, because realistically, if you're trying to get the best bang for your buck, like obviously, if you put $100 down on Colorado to win the title, you're going to win a lot of money. But if you're trying to win money, I think we got to be more strategic. And so we got to look at things that seem more realistic right now. I don't know if I'd be confident to bet a title for Colorado, considering I have not seen this team play. But go bet them. You could bet them 5.5 over or under, depending on how you feel. But I just think there's so many interesting bets out there. But props to you guys and all the confidence that you have in Coach Prime. I think if he stays in Colorado and recruits at an elite level, a championship could happen eventually. But I need to see this team play before I talk any titles this year. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, give me 5 stars, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great start to your week.